There's one sound that still wakes me up at night. It wasn't a scream of pain, it was a scream of terror. The kind that makes your heart seize before your brain can even catch up. The kind of scream that shreds the silence and leaves something heavy in the air afterward, like a warning. It was 4:03 a.m., to be exact. I remember because I looked at my watch the second I sat up in bed. That scream had cut straight through my sleep, like a knife. It came from outside, close. From cabin 6, my cabin. I tore off the blankets and bolted for the door. The forest was dead quiet, no wind, no crickets, nothing. And that's when I noticed Mason's bunk was empty. His sleeping bag was still half zipped. His shoes were still at the foot of the bed. But Mason was gone. That summer I was 22, working as a counselor at a place called Camp Autumn Pines. It was one of those rustic, backwoods summer camps in rural Pennsylvania, tucked way off the beaten path, hidden behind long dirt roads, surrounded by acres and acres of forest. The camp had been around since the 60s. Same old wooden cabins, the same chipped canoes, the same songbooks that smelled like mildew and sunblock. There were no cell phones, no internet. It was the kind of place parents sent their kids to get closer to nature. Cabin 6 was the farthest from the main lodge, right near the tree line. I remember thinking it was cool at first. It felt like our own little hideaway. Me and 6 kids between 10 and 12 years old. They were good kids, mostly, a little rowdy. One of them snored like a freight train. I didn't know it at the time, but something was already wrong with Cabin 6. I should have seen the signs. The first thing I noticed was the cold. Not just a breeze or a draft. I'm talking about bone-deep cold in the middle of July. You'd walk from one side of the cabin to the other and suddenly hit a wall of air that felt like a walk-in freezer. And it was always in the same spot, right near the window that faced the woods. The second thing was the nightmares. The kids started waking up crying. Some of them were sleepwalking. One night I found a boy named Jacob standing in the corner of the room, just staring at the wall. He didn't respond when I called his name. His eyes were wide open, but he looked like he wasn't really there. The next morning, he didn't remember it. Then the stories started. Mason was the first to say it out loud. I saw someone outside the window. I asked him to describe what he meant. He said it was a tall man, really tall, standing still, not moving. He said the man had no face. At first, I brushed it off, campfire stories, overactive imaginations. But deep down, I felt it too. Something was off in that cabin. I didn't actually see it myself until the 3rd week. It was just past 3 a.m. I had one of those uneasy wake-ups where your body knows something's wrong before your mind does. I sat up in bed, looked over at the window, and there it was, just beyond the tree line. A silhouette. It wasn't moving. It wasn't walking or swaying like the trees around it. It was just there. A tall, upright shadow, darker than anything else in the woods. At first, I thought it might be a tree, but as I kept staring, I realized it was shaped like a man. Not a man, but man-shaped. Its limbs were too long, its shoulders were too narrow, its head was tilted slightly to one side like it was studying me. And then, I blinked. Gone. Just like that. The air in the room felt like it had been sucked out. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. After that night, it became a routine. Every night at 3:06 a.m., I'd wake up without an alarm, without a sound. Just this pressure in the air like the world was holding its breath. And every time that figure would be there. Same place, same stillness. It never moved, never came closer. But I could feel it watching. Not just me, all of us. Then came the banging. It started softly like tapping on the walls. Then it got louder, more violent, like something was trying to get in. I'd grab my flashlight and run outside, heart pounding, lungs burning from panic. But there was never anyone there, just the trees. And that feeling. You know that feeling when you're being hunted? It felt like that. It all came to a head on a Wednesday. I remember because we had grilled cheese for dinner, and one of the kids threw a crust at me. That night, just like always, I woke up around 3. The room was freezing. I mean, see your breath kind of cold. The hair on my arms stood up before I even opened my eyes. I got up and opened the door, and there it was, closer than ever, maybe 10 feet away. Same shape, same height, same unnatural stillness. But this time it stepped forward, just once, and that's when I saw its face. Or rather, the absence of one. Smooth, flesh-like, blank, no eyes, no mouth, no nose, just skin stretched over a head like wet leather. And somehow, I swear, I could feel it smiling. My knees buckled. I slammed the door shut and locked it. The cold didn't leave until sunrise. I must have passed out or blanked out. I don't remember going back to bed. But when I checked on the kids the next morning, that's when I saw Mason's bunk was empty. He was just gone. I searched the bathrooms, the fire pit, the mess hall. We alerted the head counselor. Staff formed a search party. Walkie-talkies buzzed with static and panic. Hours passed, no sign of him. It was like he'd been plucked out of the world. And then around 8:30 a.m., one of the staff found him in the woods. He was barefoot, shivering, dirt all over him. His lips were blue and his hands were scratched up. When I picked him up, he whispered something. I followed the man with no face. He didn't remember anything else. Said he went to bed, and the next thing he knew, he was waking up in the woods. I pulled up his sleeve and that's when I saw them. 3 long, parallel scratch marks down his forearm, too deep for brambles, too perfect for animals, like claws. Camp Autumn Pines shut down 3 days later. The official story was unforeseen safety concerns, but they never mentioned Mason or Cabin 6, or the thing that stood outside our window at 3:06 a.m. every single night. No one asked questions, no one gave answers, and everyone who worked there just moved on, except me. It's been 20 years. I still have dreams about that place, but what keeps me up at night is what happened last month. I woke up at 3:06 a.m. No reason, no noise, just that familiar cold in the air. I looked out my window into my backyard, and there, standing at the edge of the woods, was a tall, still figure, faceless, watching, just like before. And this time, I don't think it came to visit. I think it came to stay. You ever hear something that shouldn't be possible? I mean, something so wrong, so unnatural that it makes your entire body go cold. Not from fear, but because some deep animal part of you knows it doesn't belong in this world. I heard my mother's voice, calling to me, from the middle of a dead, black lake in northern Wisconsin. And the worst part? My mother had been buried for 3 years. What I saw that night, I don't know if it was a ghost, a demon, or something older, but I still dream about it. And I wake up wet, my ears ringing with screams no one else can hear. This is what happened to me at Camp Wabana, the summer of 1997. I had just finished my junior year at UW-Madison and needed a break, a real one. My mom had died in a car accident 3 years earlier, and even though time had passed, I still hadn't really dealt with it. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat properly. So when a friend told me about a counselor position opening at a summer camp up north, Camp Wabana, I said yes without thinking. I packed my bags and drove out there in early June, hoping to find a little peace among the pine trees and lake air. The camp itself was charming. Old wooden cabins nestled between tall evergreens, a main lodge that smelled like cedar and old books, and a lake so calm and dark it looked like obsidian. There was no Wi-Fi, no cell service, no traffic, just birdsong and wind. The kids arrived the second week, about 40 campers ages 10 to 14. The counselors were all college age like me, a good bunch. We taught canoeing, swimming, arts and crafts, normal stuff. And for a while it was perfect, until the screaming started. The first time I heard it, I thought it was just some animal. It was late, well past midnight. I was sitting around the last embers of the campfire with 2 other counselors, Maya and Nick. We were swapping ghost stories, mostly cheesy ones. Then we heard it, a scream. A woman's scream, high-pitched and full of panic. It echoed from across the lake, long and ragged, like someone had been running and suddenly stopped to scream their lungs out. The 3 of us froze mid-sentence. I said, "Did you hear that?" Nick was already standing up, squinting toward the dark water. The lake looked normal, just still, quiet. The stars reflected perfectly on its surface. Maya said, "Could be a loon. They scream sometimes, right?" I nodded, but deep down, I knew it wasn't a bird. It sounded human, too human. Still, we let it go, because we didn't want to be the weird ones. Not yet. The screaming came back the next night. And the night after that, always around the same time, between midnight and 12:30. The kids started whispering about it. Some said a woman had drowned in the lake years ago. Others claimed she was still looking for her child. One 11-year-old girl told me, completely serious, that she heard the woman crying outside her cabin window. I tried to stay logical. I told myself it had to be a prank, maybe someone messing with us, or some weird bird call bouncing across the water. But the voice, it wasn't random. It wasn't just a scream. It was calling, like it was trying to be heard, trying to be understood. After 5 nights of the same scream, same voice, same time, I couldn't take it anymore. The camp director kept brushing it off, said we were tired, said it was our imagination. But I wasn't imagining what I saw. On the 6th night, I grabbed a canoe after lights out. I didn't tell anyone. The lake was black, still as glass. There wasn't even a breeze. I pushed off the dock and started paddling out into the center. I don't know what I expected, but what I found, I'll never forget. I let the canoe drift in the silence. My breath was shallow, my ears strained. Then I heard it, just above the waterline, soft, broken, and familiar. "Daniel, come here." My whole body went stiff. That voice, I'd heard it 1,000 times, whispering to me when I was sick, singing to me at bedtime. It was my mother, but she was dead. I turned, slowly. My flashlight shook in my hand, and there, about 20 feet from the canoe, was a figure, waist deep in the water. Hair hanging over her face, skin pale like moonlight. "Daniel," she said again, but her mouth didn't move. The voice just came. Inside my head, I whispered, "Mom," but it wasn't her. That thing tilted its head again impossibly far. Its arms were stiff like they were broken. Then, without ripples, without sound, it glided toward me. Not walking, not swimming, just moving. I screamed, paddled backwards so fast the canoe rocked violently. Water sloshed inside. I nearly tipped. I didn't look back. I just paddled until I hit the dock with a thud. I scrambled out on my hands and knees. The lake, empty again, like nothing had happened. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't even sit still. I just paced the lodge like a lunatic. No one believed me, not even Maya. But a week after I left camp, a kid disappeared. He'd gotten up in the middle of the night. A sleepwalker, they said. They found his shoes at the edge of the dock. They never found him. I've never returned to that lake. I don't go near water if I can help it. Sometimes I still hear her voice, not on the lake, in my dreams. She says the same thing every time. "Daniel, come here." And when I wake up, the bed is wet, my feet are dirty, and the taste of lake water is in my mouth. It's been 5 years, but I still hear his voice sometimes, usually when I'm about to fall asleep. "Don't go near the fire pit," that's what he said, over and over again. His voice wasn't panicked, it wasn't even angry, it was empty, like all the life had already been drained out of him. We laughed at him, thought he was just one of the other campers playing a prank. He looked weird, sure, pale, sunken eyes, wearing old clothes like something out of a thrift store from the 90s. But we didn't think much of it until we told the counselors his name. I'll never forget the way their faces changed, the way the head counselor's voice cracked when she whispered, "Alan, that can't be." Alan disappeared in 1992. That's when everything started unraveling. In the summer of 2017, I took a job as a counselor at Camp Pine Bend, tucked deep in the woods of Vermont. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a break from my messy life back home. I had just flunked out of college, burned some bridges, and needed a place to disappear for a while. The camp was beautiful in a rugged, forgotten sort of way. Old wooden cabins that creaked with every step. A silver-blue lake so still it looked painted on. Trees so thick they seemed to swallow sound. There was no cell reception, no Wi-Fi, no traffic, just us in the woods. At first, it was perfect. Bonfires, s'mores, late-night games, kids screaming with laughter. Everything you'd expect from a summer camp frozen in time. But something about Pine Bend always felt off. There were parts of the camp that seemed colder, trails that made you feel like someone was watching from behind the trees. And worst of all, a circle of old stones in the woods that the staff never talked about. During orientation, one of the senior counselors, a grizzled guy named Phil who had worked there for decades, stopped us at a roped-off clearing. He didn't say much, just pointed. That used to be the fire pit. It's closed now. Has been since '92. No explanation, just that. And then we were ushered away. I remember peeking back over my shoulder. The stones forming the fire pit were cracked and uneven, covered in moss and dirt. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years, yet there were strange markings in the soil, like someone or something had recently walked around it. I asked another counselor later, a girl named Meredith, who had worked 2 summers there, why it was shut down. She hesitated. Just don't bring it up around Phil. He gets weird about it. Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. A few days into the session, one of my campers, a shy 12-year-old named Kaylee, came to me during free time. She said she'd gotten lost on the trail near the lake and that someone helped her back. He told me not to go near the fire pit, she said, fidgeting with her sleeves. He looked weird. He was really pale. His clothes were old, like old. I thought it was a joke, a prank, maybe another counselor messing with the kids. I asked what his name was. Alan, she said. He didn't smile or anything. He just kept saying it over and over. When I checked the roster, there was no Alan. I asked every other staff member. No one knew a kid by that name. At first, I assumed she imagined it. Maybe she'd watched a horror movie before camp. But then another camper mentioned seeing the same boy near the woods. Then another. Same description, same warning. Stay away from the fire pit. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Kaylee said. Around 2 a.m., I grabbed a flashlight and walked toward the fire pit. The woods felt wrong. Everything was too quiet, not even crickets. And when I reached the clearing, I swear I heard whispering. Dozens of voices, low and layered, like a chant. But no one was there. I went into the main lodge the next day and started digging through old records. I found a counselor's logbook from 1992. June 13th, camper Alan R. missing after an argument. June 14th, search failed. Area closed. Staff instructed not to speak of incident. Then a line scratched out violently. Alan said the fire called to him. 2 nights later, I was doing lights out rounds when I saw someone standing outside cabin B. It was him, Alan. Same kid Kaylee described, same clothes from 1992. His skin looked bluish in the flashlight. His eyes were glassy. Don't go to the fire pit, he said again. They're still down there. Then he turned and vanished into the trees. I cornered Phil the next morning. I told him what I saw. He didn't even argue. He just sat down, trembling. We had a fire ceremony back then, he said. Alan freaked out, ran into the woods screaming. We never found him, but we heard him at night for years. The fire pit, it's not just stones. It's a doorway. I don't know what possessed me, but I went back. The pit looked deeper than before, unnaturally deep, like the earth had sunk. I leaned over the edge, and that's when I saw them, dozens of faces, twisted, scorched, reaching up. Alan's was among them, crying silently, and something else, something huge, just beneath them. Watching, I ran. I left the camp the next day, but before I did, I asked Phil one last question. Why didn't you put his name in the records? He looked out the window and said, we tried, but every time we wrote it, the ink would vanish by morning. Sometimes at night, I still hear his voice. Stay away from the fire pit. And every time I dream, I see the flames. But they're not warm. They're cold. And I know someday they'll call me too. You can still go visit Camp Pine Bend, but the fire pit is still there, waiting. I need you to listen to me very carefully, because once you hear what happened in that place, you won't forget it. Not tomorrow, not next week, not ever. It was supposed to be a summer job, a way to get out of the city for a few months, a paycheck, some lake time, maybe a few stories to tell back at school. But I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up to wake up in a cold sweat every night, remembering the sound of jars vibrating in the dark, or the word that was carved into his skin by something we never saw. And I swear to you, whatever lives in that bunkhouse, it's still there. Summer of 1987. I was 17, just old enough to think I knew everything, and just dumb enough to take the first job that got me out of my parents' house. Camp Granger, they called it. a small private summer camp tucked way up north in the Maine woods. It was old, run down, but the pay was decent. The kids were all right, and the other counselors, well, we were all there to get away from something. But Camp Granger had secrets. There were places the campers weren't allowed to go. One in particular, a splintered, collapsing structure at the edge of the forest. The staff just called it the Bone Shack, and everyone knew not to mess with it. But of course, someone did. It started like these things always do, around a fire after lights out with too much soda, too little supervision, and just the right amount of bravado. We were swapping ghost stories, stuff about drowned campers and shadow people in the woods. And then one of the guys, Jared, this loudmouth from out of state, points toward the woods and says, "What's the deal with that creepy-ass cabin back there?" We all froze. Someone said, "You mean the Bone Shack?" Jared laughed, but there was tension in his voice. "You guys seriously scared of that place?" I wish we'd just ignored him, but instead, someone made the dare. Sleep there, alone, one night, bet you won't. He accepted. He shouldn't have. We walked him out there just before midnight. The bunkhouse sat deeper in the woods than I realized. No trail, just brush and shadows. The trees got denser, the air colder. It felt like we were crossing into a different world, one that didn't want us. The bunkhouse itself looked like it had been dead for decades. The wood was rotted, gray, soft in places, windows boarded up or shattered, the roof sagged. But what really hit you was the silence. No bugs, no birds, not even wind, just stillness. Jared stepped in first. We all stood at the door for a minute, our flashlights catching something strange on the floor. Symbols, burned into the planks, circles, arrows, some language I didn't recognize, drawn in black dust, maybe charcoal. The smell was foul, mold, rust, and something else, metallic. Jars lined the walls, old glass ones, with yellowed lids and peeling labels. Each jar was filled with bones, tiny ones, too small to be human, most of them. The next day, word got around, and Jackie, the oldest staff member who'd worked there for years, pulled us aside. She didn't waste time sugarcoating it. She told us the bunkhouse wasn't built by the camp. It was built over something older. A long time ago, that land was owned by a spiritual group, not quite a church, more like a cult. They believed the forest was sacred, alive, and that it demanded offerings. They used bones, symbols, rituals. They were trying to summon something or protect themselves from it. No one really knows. The group vanished in the 40s. Fire took their buildings, except the foundation, which became the bunkhouse. And ever since, strange things had happened there. Symbols reappeared, animals died near it, kids reported whispers when walking by, but no one had slept in it, not until Jared. We found Jared the next morning. He wasn't in the bunkhouse. He was standing outside it, barefoot, shirtless, frozen. His eyes were wide, not scared, hollow, like something had drained all the color out of him. We rushed over, started asking what happened. He didn't speak. Then someone pointed at his chest. Scratched into his skin, bright red, raised like welts, was a word. Leave. We brought him back to camp. The nurse asked if he'd done it to himself, but the scratches were too clean, too straight, and they weren't bleeding. They looked like they had been burned into him from under the skin. He finally spoke that night. Just one thing. It whispered while I slept. I should have let it go, but something inside me needed to understand. On the last night of camp, I went back, alone. I brought a flashlight, a camera, and a bottle of whiskey I stole from the staff cabin. It was nearly midnight. The air felt electric, like before a thunderstorm. I stepped inside. The symbols were back, darker. The jars were vibrating, just slightly, like something inside them was moving. And then I heard it, breathing. But it wasn't mine. It was behind me. I turned slowly, and in the far corner, crouched in the shadows, was something not human. It had the shape of a man, but not the proportions. Too long, too thin. Its skin was gray, like ash, and it was carving something into the floor with a piece of bone. It didn't react to my light, until I said something. I don't remember what. That's when it looked up. Its eyes glowed faint red, and it smiled. I ran. I didn't stop to look back. Branches whipped my face. I tripped, fell, crawled through mud and pine needles. At some point, I blacked out. I woke up on the gravel road that led to the highway, shivering, covered in dirt, and on my arms and my back. more scratches. One word this time. Stay. I never told anyone the full truth, until now. Camp Granger shut down the next year. Fire, they said, electrical issue. But I know the truth. Something lives in that bunkhouse, something old, something hungry. And if you ever find yourself in the Maine woods and you see a rotting building where no path leads, don't go in. Don't follow the symbols. And if you hear whispers in your sleep, you have two choices. Leave or stay. Just pray it lets you choose. If you're enjoying these horror stories, hit that like button, share with your friends, and subscribe for more spine-chilling tales every week. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. The last thing Ben said before they took him away was, "She's not done yet." He was filthy, mud all over his face, no shoes, lips cracked, shaking like it was 30 degrees, but it was the middle of July. He looked up at us with these wide, glassy eyes that looked like they'd seen something that broke him. And then he started laughing, quiet at first, then louder, until it didn't even sound human anymore. That was the moment I knew something was terribly wrong with that forest. And whatever he saw out there, it hadn't let go. That summer was supposed to be a reset for me. I was 17, fresh out of a rough school year, and desperate to get away from everything. Screens, noise, my family, even my friends. So when I landed a counselor position at Clearwater Youth Camp in Southern Oregon, I was honestly excited. It was remote, like 3 hours from the nearest gas station remote. No cell service, no internet, just trees, dirt roads, and silence. At first, it was peaceful. We had about 40 campers that summer, kids between 10 and 16. Simple cabins, trail hikes, campfires, arts and crafts. But there was something about the woods surrounding that place. You know how sometimes the quiet doesn't feel comforting, it feels wrong? Like the silence is waiting for something? It happened on our third night. We were setting up for the campfire, marshmallows, flashlights, all that stuff. The sun had just dipped behind the ridge when one of the younger campers tugged at my shirt. "Who's that girl?" he asked. I followed his finger to the tree line. There she was, a girl in a green hoodie standing completely still just beyond the last row of trees. Not moving, not swaying, just watching. I thought maybe she was a local kid. Someone from the nearby reservation maybe, or a runaway. I took a few steps toward her. "Hey," I called out. "Are you okay?" Nothing, not even a blink. Just that fixed stare, like she was looking through me. I blinked, and she was gone. Not ran, not ducked behind a tree, just gone. And for the first time, I felt it, that crawling feeling at the base of your neck, like you're the one being hunted. Ben was one of our older campers, 15, quiet, smart, kind of nerdy. He loved to draw, and you'd always find him sketching trees or birds or weird little mushrooms he found on hikes. About a week in, he came to me. "I've seen her too," he said. I tried to play it cool. "The girl in the hoodie?" He nodded. "She watches every night from the same spot." I asked if he'd talk to her. He shook his head. "I think she wants me to follow her." I didn't know what to say. We hadn't had a single missing person report in the area. The staff had already walked the perimeter twice that week. But Ben started changing. He stopped hanging out with the other campers. He stopped eating. Just sat in his bunk, drawing her. We held a staff meeting about it the next day. Some thought she was a local runaway. Others thought maybe one of the older kids was pulling a prank. We reported it. Local sheriff drove up, walked the property, searched the woods, found nothing. No footprints, no fabric, no hair, just more trees and silence. But after that, the campers kept seeing her. They started calling her the tree girl. Some kids said she moved between the cabins at night. One said he heard breathing from under his bed. Another one woke up with a drawing of her taped to his wall. No one admitted to doing it. That was the last normal night we had. Around 2 a.m., one of the counselors shook me awake. "Ben's gone." His bed was empty. His shoes were gone. His sketchbook was left behind, open to a drawing of the woods. We found a trail of his sketches leading into the trees, crumpled pages left like breadcrumbs. The last one was pinned to a tree. It showed her standing behind him. We searched for 22 hours. Local deputies, search dogs, drones, nothing. It was like the woods swallowed him whole. Then, just after sunset the next evening, he walked out of the trees, alone, mud-covered, trembling, bleeding from his nose. He collapsed at the edge of the fire pit and whispered, "She's not done yet," over and over again, like a broken record. Later that night, Ben finally asked for his sketchbook. We gave it to him. He didn't say a word, just started drawing, and when he showed us the final picture, I felt cold all over. It wasn't a girl anymore. It was something wearing a girl's face. Gray skin, thin lips, and eyes too big for any human skull. And the smile, a wide, broken smile, like it had been split open. The camp closed 2 days later. They told the parents it was a mountain lion. But we knew the truth. Ben was never the same. And to this day, I sometimes hear scratching at my window at night. When I look, there's nothing there. But once, I found something on my porch. A single muddy footprint, size 5. If you ever go camping in southern Oregon, and you see a girl in a green hoodie standing just beyond the trees, don't talk to her, don't follow her, and whatever you do, don't let her know your name, because once she knows it, you're hers. Do you know what it's like to hear your name whispered in the dead of night when no one's around to say it? Not once, not twice, but every single night growing closer, colder, until it feels like someone's face is right next to yours, breathing. I do. My name is Ben, and in the summer of 2009, I went to a wilderness camp in Colorado. It was supposed to be a month of campfires, trail hikes, and making friends. Instead, I left with scars I still have today, some on my body, and some I don't think will ever fade from my mind. Because something was in those woods with us. Something we couldn't see, something that knew our names. It was called Camp Pinebow, tucked deep in the Rockies, not far from Leadville. No cabins, no electricity, just tents, hiking gear, and raw wilderness. My parents thought it would be good for me. Fresh air and adventure, they said. I was 12, shy, still awkward in my own skin, and definitely not the outdoorsy type. But I went. There were about 20 of us, boys and girls between 10 and 14. The counselors were these enthusiastic college kids with braided bracelets and mosquito-bitten ankles. They smiled a lot. They had no idea what was coming. I was assigned to Tent 4 with 2 other kids. Mason, who was quiet but kind of funny, and Trevor, who was loud, sarcastic, and always eating. The first few nights were uneventful. We roasted marshmallows, told ghost stories by the fire, and stayed up late laughing about how bad the latrines smelled. I wish it had stayed that way. It was on the 4th night that things changed. Trevor woke up screaming. At first, we thought it was a nightmare, but when we turned on the flashlight, we saw these long, reddish marks running down his forearm. Not deep enough to bleed, but definitely not faint. 3 angry scratches like something had raked across his skin. He swore he felt something brush against him in the night, cold, bony fingers. Of course, the counselors brushed it off. Maybe he rolled onto a zipper, they said. Maybe he scratched himself in his sleep. But by the end of that week, 5 more kids had the same marks. Not just scratches. Some had weird bruises, almost like small bite marks on their ribs and shoulders. One girl, Alyssa, had a set of teeth-shaped bruises on her upper thigh. She hadn't left her tent the whole night. There were no signs of animals, no raccoons, no mountain lions, no tracks in the dirt. The scratches weren't random. They all looked deliberate. Something or someone was walking between the tents at night. It started as a joke. We'd lie in our tents at night and say stuff like, maybe it's a ghost, or maybe Bigfoot wants a roommate. But then we started hearing it, the whispering. At first I thought it was the wind in the trees, the way pine needles hiss when the breeze moves just right. But it wasn't random. It had rhythm, cadence, like breathing, like words. One night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of our tent, and I swear I heard my name. Ben, soft, drawn out, like someone trying not to wake the others. I sat up, heart hammering, and looked around. Trevor and Mason were both out cold, not even twitching. The next night Mason heard it. The night after, so did Trevor. We weren't alone in those woods. One of the older campers, Zach, had a digital recorder he used to prank people, but one night he set it up in his tent and left it running until morning. We all gathered after breakfast to hear it, half laughing and nudging each other. But when he hit play, no one laughed. At first, it was the usual stuff, rustling sleeping bags, someone snoring, a cough. Then came the footsteps. They started faint, like someone circling the tent slowly, crunching leaves underfoot. Then the whispering began. One by one, it said each of our names: Zach, Alyssa, Mason, Ben, Trevor. A perfect roll call. And then at the very end, the voice changed. It got deeper, crackly, like it was underwater. It whispered one more name: Ellis. We looked around at each other. There was no Ellis at camp, no camper, no counselor, no staff, but whoever or whatever was whispering knew that name. After the tape, the counselors brought in a local wildlife tracker. He spent hours walking around the campsite, checked for bears, mountain lions, even snakes. He found nothing. No paw prints, no scat, no broken branches, nothing that could explain the scratches or the voices. But then he pulled one of the counselors aside and whispered something. I overheard. He said if it's not animals, it might be something using the kids, something using them in their sleep. I didn't know what that meant until that night. Around 2 a.m., I woke up and saw Trevor sitting up in his sleeping bag, eyes closed, lips moving. He was whispering, "Ellis is in the trees." I leaned over and shook him, but he wouldn't stop. Then Mason sat up, same blank face, same whisper. "Ellis is listening." My chest felt like it was caving in. I screamed, kicked Trevor awake, then Mason. They both blinked and looked at me like I was crazy. They had no memory of saying anything. But the next morning, Trevor's shoulder had a bruise, a bite, with actual teeth marks, deep. It went through his shirt. We all knew then something was getting inside our tents and inside us. That last night, we didn't sleep. We kept all the flashlights on, sat in a circle, prayed it would just end. Around midnight, the wind stopped. No leaves, no sounds, just stillness. Then the zipper on our tent moved. Slow, deliberate, zip. Trevor whimpered. I turned off the light. Dumbest thing I've ever done. Footsteps, slow and heavy, circled our tent. Once, twice, then silence. And then we heard it. Wet, slow, raspy breathing, right against the tent wall. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I had to know. Maybe it wanted me to see. I crawled to the flap and peeked out, and I saw a face. Its skin was gray, dried, split, like old leather stretched too tight. Its eyes were black, but weeping something white and cloudy. Its mouth was torn at the edges like it had whispered too many names for too long. And it smiled and whispered, "Ben." I blacked out. When I came to, I was in the camp infirmary. Camp was shutting down. Parents came early. The staff burned the recording, said it caused hysteria, denied everything. But I had emailed myself a copy the night before. I've listened to it dozens of times, the same pattern. Every name, then a pause, and at the very end, Ellis is coming. I don't camp anymore. Sometimes, just as I'm drifting off to sleep, I hear it again. My name, so soft like it's inches from my ear. Last week, I found another bite on my back. I think Ellis followed me home. And I don't think he's whispering anymore. I think he's waiting.